Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rob and today we're painting some Emperor's Children. So in preparation for the launch of Emperor's Children, which I think pre-orders are out on Saturday, I am going to be painting an Emperor's Children Marine. I've kit bashed this Marine with some plastics as well as some resin parts from some various Emperor's Children Forge World kits to create a unique looking Marine. And we're going to go through and I'm going to show you how we painted it. So we're going to start off with Pixie Pink and we're going to airbrush this over a white, just a white rattle can. So not even a pre-shade, just a white rattle can. It took 2 thin coats to build up this colour. And as you've seen from the box art, the purples that we've seen are not in fact purples for Emperor's Children, they are in fact pink. So I've decided to go for this, similar to the box art, but I think that it's actually relatively straightforward to achieve, and if you don't have an airbrush you can just use a brush. We'll be using an airbrush not that much in this tutorial, so yeah, as I say, you can just base coat this with a brush if you feel the need. We're going to go to Pink Potion, which is a very, very desaturated pink. I mean, pink is already a desaturated colour, but this is even more so because it's obviously got lots of white or lots of ivory in it. And what you can see here is I'm just building up some natural highlights following the light coming from the front of the model, and I'll do this on the back as well. So basically the sides and underneath will be in shadow. In terms of if you don't have an airbrush, you could always dry brush this. You could always glaze this up if you wanted to, or blend it up if you wanted to. But life will become much easier if you use an airbrush. And coincidentally, I am doing an airbrushing course, introduction to airbrushing course, in partnership with airbrushes.com. So if you want to get some tickets to that, if you've never airbrushed before, then this is going to be a great course for you. Everything is provided. All you need to do is bring the models, and all the airbrushes provided, all the kits provided, all the compressors are provided as well. So if you are interested in learning how to airbrush, then just pop a comment down below and I'll send you a link. So done our Zenithal highlight with Pink Potion, and next we're going to use Familiar Pink and we're going to use some Speed Paint Medium. So we are going to use 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 drops, I think it was, of speed paint, but the point is that we're going to use an awful lot. I think it was actually an 8 drops, so 8 or 9 drops, and we're going to use 1 drop of Familiar Pink with that. So it's very, very thin down, but it is important, I'd say, rather than using water, to use the Speed Paint Medium, because it will just help it to flow. Now what you can see here is that I'm applying it all over the model. Now if you've seen any of my previous kind of paint jobs or videos, I often will use oils in order to kind of pin wash a model and to do this process. Because of the colour, I'm not doing that for this one. I've cut out oils completely. You could find some pink oils. You could mix in red and like a titanium white together if you did want to do an oil wash. I feel though, I didn't really want it to be too grimy. I didn't even use any battle damage on this model. So I think that rather than using oils, I think my preference here is to, as I say, use some really thin down speed paint. You could use some washes as well, but I thought this was a nice colour, and it just tints it all back together and kind of just gives the whole feel just a really nice pink vibe, which is what we're going for these kind of either late Heresy or 40k Emperor's Children. Right, we're going to move on to a Grim Black Speed Paint next. So you'll notice that I've just done the entire model in this kind of pinky colour, and that's what I would advise as well. And then you need to pick out some parts of the armour that you're going to do in black. Now I've used speed paint. You could just use normal matte black paint, but I've used speed paint basically because it just flows really nicely and it's really simple to use. But I would say that you need 2 coats of this Grim Black speed paint. I didn't thin it in any way. It's just straight from the pot. But don't be liberal with it, because whenever you're liberal with any kinds of washes or speed paints, they can have a tendency to flow. and to pool as well in places that we don't, especially if we use like lots of it. So just build it up in thin coats, I would say, but as I said before, it flows really nicely, so this is why I'm using it. 2 thin coats of this though. And I just had a look at the artwork that GW did for the new box set, and I just kind of copied their artwork. Right, the darkness is up next. So this is one of the John Blanche paints, from the masterclass set that the Army Painter has created. So this is now out actually in the set, but the individual paint is not out yet. These are soon to be released. Not quite sure when, but they are soon to be released. If you wanted to create something similar like the darkness, you could just add a little bit of black into blue, and it would create that desaturated blue that we've got here. And then what you can do is to kind of you can do a chunky edge highlight with the darkness, and then you can add a drop of ivory in, as you can see here, and then from there we can do further edge highlights, and then with the almost pure ivory we can do some dot edge highlights as well, and that's just to render the black. Next up, we're going to use a combination of heavy metal and shining silver. We're going to use both of these combined together. You might be saying, well, why aren't I just using a dark silver? Look, gunmetal, that's a great silver, but it was basically because I had these two just on my desk. So if you wanted like a darkish or a mid-tone silver, you could use a gunmetal color, but just because I'm going to be using shining silver, and just because I had heavy metal on my desk, and it's one that I'm using an awful lot heavy metal as well, I've just literally combined these paints together just to make a mid-tone silver. This is the time-consuming bit, doing all the trim on this. There's no way around it really. It is time consuming. It just takes it took me about half an hour just to get through this and then make any alterations. Of course you're going to make mistakes. It doesn't matter how good you are, when you're doing kind of metal colors on like light colors like this, you'll always tend to make mistakes, so just correct it as and when. So next up we're going to use Occultist Cloak, and this is going to be the wash for that mid-tone silver that we created. I've used grey rather than black for this one, just to try something new out. There's no rhyme or reason apart from going, you know what, I just fancied using something different just to see what it looks like, and it was quite nice to be kind of create this kind of like bluey black wash. You'll notice that I added some speed paint medium into this. This is obviously just to help it flow. We don't want pure Occultist Cloak over the silvers, because that would really knock back the silvers in a way that we don't want. So if you can just fin it 50-50, maybe even 1 drop of Occultist Cloak to 2 parts thinner, and I think that will give you like a nice kind of wash that you can use on these silver parts here. And any parts that you want in pure darkness or darker, I'm thinking underneath the pad that you can see here, right at the bottom of it, you could add a second coat of the Occultist Cloak color. So next up we're going to use that pure shining silver now, and then we're just going to render the shape. Now this is not a competition piece. This is for a YouTube tutorial that's straightforward for you guys to follow. So what I've just done here is just to make it quite scratchy, just to render the shape a little bit more, just to add a little bit of luster back into the silver, because once you add that speed paint on, it will knock it right back in terms of the luster. But just go back in with this shining silver, and you can be quite rough with this. If you've watched any of my previous videos before, you'll know that I'm just quite rough with the metallics in terms of highlighting, unless it's for something really, really special. But that gives it kind of like a beaten, used kind of look. Sometimes pristine metals, they look out of place for the world of the Horus Heresy, right? So Doomfire Drab next up. So we're going to use some edge highlights here. We're going to do some edge highlights here with this Doomfire Drab. You could do this before you do the silvers. I just did it in this order just because I knew that I would make mistakes with the silvers, and then correct it. So this is part of that correction process, where I'm just going in with those original kind of pink colours that we had, and then just finally going in with Doomfire Drab as the kind of final edge highlight. You could miss this process if you wanted to. There's no real need, I think, to to do really refined edge highlights on models like this, but you can do if you want to take the time. So next up we're going to use matte white, and as you can see here, I'm painting all the leather elements matte white. I'm also going to paint the wrist guards on this matte white, and the gun casing I'm going to do it in white as well. A little unusual to do a gun casing in white, so that tends to be something certainly in the Horus Heresy you find with the Thousand Suns. You might even do it for Emperor's Children, and it's always a little bit of a challenge. But what I would say is that this matte white lays down quite nicely. You can see here that this is just one coat and the coverage is pretty good, but it took me 2 coats of this matte white to get a decent coverage. Don't try and do it in one coat because it would just be too thick, so try and do two thin coats. And you can see here this is what the matte white elements look like, and basically this is just a base for our speed paints. If you've seen any previous videos I've done, this is what I'll often do, make a base for the speed paints. So we're going to use speed paint medium and plasmatic bolts, and we're going to do that a very thin coat of this. So this is 1 part plasmatic bolts to about 16 parts speed paint. You can see me here even adding even more speed paint medium in, just to make it very thin, and this is what we're going to use on the white elements. So you can see on the gun casing here, what I'm trying to do is just tint it a sort of a greenish blue. It's a turquoise, right? A turquoise color here, but what I didn't want to do is start from a base of turquoise and work up to white, because I just knew it would take me ages to do that. It's sometimes better to do it this way, which is base coat it all in white, hit it with this very thin glaze of speed paint, and then you can kind of refine it with just pure white if you want to, but this created quite a cool kind of contrast against the pink armor, this turquoise color. Next up we're going to use dark wood. I often use hardened leather for any leather elements. However, I just wanted to, again, just to show you guys something different, something that I've not done before. I didn't really feel it was appropriate to go for this model to go with something that was quite orangey in tone, which is the hardened leather I find is. So I wanted something more desaturated, more classic brown, a darker brown, and the darkened wood worked really well. And I use this on all the leather elements, on the gun casing, on the leather straps, but I also actually redid the cuffs and the tabard in this colour as well, because I quite liked it. Right, next up we're going to use greedy gold. So I did notice that there wasn't a lot of gold used in the kind of the heavy metal paint jobs, but I did feel this was kind of like I wanted a late Heresy feel for this model, bringing in some of the kind of like those resin bits, so I did feel it was appropriate to add some gold elements to it. You could reverse this as well. The silver parts that we've done, we could do those in golds or vice versa. This is just a very simple gold recipe though. So we're going to start with the base of greedy gold. This will require 2 thin coats over this quite light colour, so just bear that in mind before you go any further. And then we're going to use bright gold. So this is a very yellow gold, perfect for generally just Emperor's Children. I find that I would use bright gold on most Emperor's Children anyway. And you can see here I'm just using some very rough highlighting, nothing too fancy, nothing refined, just very rough highlighting. And then next up we're going to use some dark skin shade, and this is going to be a wash that we're going to use all over our gold elements. You could use brown washes, green washes might be really good as well. Again, this is just one that I've used a lot, the dark skin shade. I think it works quite well for just most golds. What you'll notice though, I found that the golds at the moment are quite rich, is what I would say, and then adding this dark skin shade, it didn't make that situation better. It made them almost more rich, I felt, in the hand. So we needed to, I felt, desaturate the golds here, just to time with the model. The fact that we've used desaturated, pinks are desaturated reds, right? So the whole model just feels quite desaturated, and then we had these quite rich golds. At this point I felt like we needed to do something about that. So you'll see in the next step what we do. which is I'm going to use a combination of bright silver and shining silver, and use this just to roughly highlight these gold elements, just a bit of edge highlighting, I wouldn't even describe as edge highlighting really, you know, just to do some very broad highlights. And because we've added silver into that bright gold, that has had the effect of desaturating that bright gold even further, you know, similar to how we might add white or ivory into a color to desaturate it. Adding silver into a color really knocks back the luster of golds, and desaturates it. And then at this point I was like, okay, I'm happy with this now. The key though was to add in the silver just to desaturate it. Right, and you can see I've moved a few steps ahead here, but I've added the head. Nothing too exciting about that. That was just a series of washes, warrior skin, and then washing it with some military green wash. And then just did the silvers on the face exactly as we've done the silvers before. I've done some kind of highlighting, edge highlighting with the on the white on the gun casing. And then next up we've used satin varnish and matte varnish, a combination of the two, and we're just giving this a final protection, just to bring everything all together. I thought the pinks that I'd done were quite matte and the blacks were quite matte just because of the fact we'd used speed paints over them. So what I wanted to do is just bring some luster back to those armor plates, and we can do that by adding a mix of 2 parts satin to 1 part matte varnish, and then that will just bring back some luster back to the armor, just because that's what happens with satin varnish, and it just gives it protects the whole model and gives it a uniform look as well. For the base I've just used some simple greys, and just kind of dry brushed it. I've mixed in a little bit of brown and yellows into that, into the grey colour for the bases, but yeah, just added kind of ivory in just to build it up and dry brush it. Nothing too complicated there. It's up to you how you would want to do your bases. I did start off with greens for the base, believe it or not, and then felt it didn't quite work, or I hadn't got it quite right, so I just opted for kind of for greystone. And then you can see me adding some old Forge World weathering powders onto the base here. This is light earth. It's an absolutely amazing one. It's pretty useful. And then I've sealed it with some white spirit, so I've just dabbed on a little bit of white spirit over the top of those weathering powders just to seal them in. And then when it's all dry, I've given the base edge a coat of matte black. It's always the best part of any project, this, isn't it? This is when it really comes together, when you haven't got the messiness of the base, and then it becomes suddenly neat and tidy. But what I would say, I'm really pleased with how the pink came out. I think that you can see kind of the shading on the side of the armor. It's quite soft shading, but worked really well, and I was pleased with that very thin kind of speed paint wash or glaze that we created, put all over the armor. So I think as a quick way to go about doing your emperorschildren, I think that this could be a good way to do it. And I think that using that gold, using some heresy parts, has made it kind of give it that late heresy feel, but doesn't feel out of place for kind of for 40k either. And then this is the final model finished up, and you can see a 360 view of this now. And I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If there's any comments you want to give me, anything you liked about the video, anything you'd like to see next, just let me know. As we YouTubers always say, I really appreciate a sub, really appreciate a comment, and don't forget to like as well. And I shall see you guys on the next one, where we'll be painting an Imperial Fist Terminator. See you soon.